It's pretty wild how a single comment from a political leader can just set off an absolute media firestorm. But what if the real story isn't just the comment itself, but the two completely different realities that grew out of it? This isn't just about politics, folks. It's about a deep and honestly a growing divide in how our media tells a story. So let's get into it.
So, how does one single statement lead to accusations of Trump like rhetoric on one side and then a desperate smear campaign on the other? What is actually happening behind the headlines here? That's the big question we're going to unpack. Okay, so this all kicked off with one comment, a single, pretty explosive accusation, actually. It happened during a long-form podcast interview where conservative leader Pierre Poilievre made a claim that would basically ignite the whole media landscape.
So what was he talking about? Well, Poilievre was referring to a pretty controversial vacation Prime Minister Trudeau took years ago. But he didn't just bring up an old scandal. He flat out accused Trudeau of breaking the law and then claimed the RCMP didn't do their job investigating it. This didn't just reopen an old wound. It created a brand new one.
And almost immediately, the media landscape just fractured. Instead of one single story that everyone was reporting on, you had two completely opposite interpretations take hold. And that created a major clash of narratives. So on one side, you had major news outlets and pundits who quickly framed the whole thing as dangerous and, frankly, reckless. They argued that Poilievre was just obsessed with the past, that he was undermining really important institutions like the RCMP, and that he was using these divisive Trump-style tactics. The takeaway from their perspective, this is a sign he's not fit to lead. But online commentators saw something completely different. They painted the media's reaction as a kind of manufactured outrage, a coordinated smear that wasn't designed to hold Poilievre accountable, but to protect the political establishment from a leader they're afraid of, a leader who might expose corruption.
And this is where that divide becomes crystal clear. I mean, the exact same event is being seen in two completely different ways. One side sees a threat to democracy. The other sees a corrupt media protecting a corrupt system. They're literally describing two different realities.
So this brings us to a core part of the argument from those online sources, that the media doesn't just have a different take on things, it actually applies a completely different set of rules, depending on who's talking. Check out this specific example. When a Liberal MP comes out and publicly criticizes his own party's budget, you'll often hear media panels call it a healthy and robust discussion. But when conservatives show even a hint of internal disagreement, it gets framed as a revolt that shows the party is in total disarray. And this moment on a CBC panel, for the critics, it just perfectly illustrated their point. A journalist, right after he praised that Liberal MP's critique, joked that speaking so honestly might get him bounced out of the studio. Now, for people who already see bias, that wasn't a joke. That was a candid admission of the media's unspoken rules. And this alleged bias, it isn't just about language. It's also about what stories even get covered in the first place. Online sources argue that the media's focus is completely out of sync with what the public is actually worried about, and they point to government reports and polling to back it up.
For example, they point to things like the Auditor General's absolutely scathing report on the Canada Revenue Agency. So while the media was focusing on Poilievre's comments, this report was detailing massive failures in government services, hour-long calls, and a 145% spike in complaints.
And this number, this just brilliantly illustrates the problem. The Auditor General found that the CRA's call abandonment rate was 21%. That means more than 1 in 5 people who call for help, wait on hold, and then just hang up before ever talking to a real human being. So what's normal? Well, the acceptable industry standard for a call center is somewhere between 2 to 5%. The gap between how the government is performing and the normal standard is just massive. So online critics are asking, why isn't this the firestorm? And think about this. Despite weeks of media coverage suggesting his leadership was on shaky ground, polling shows that Poilievre's support among his own voters is rock solid. Almost 80% want him to stay right where he is. This shows a huge disconnect between the media narrative of a party in crisis and the reality of his base.
So when you put all of these different pieces together, you start to see that this isn't just about one comment anymore. It's really about a fundamental battle over who gets to frame reality.
We are left with two completely irreconcilable stories. In one, the media is the hero, the guardian of democracy. And in the other, the media is the villain, an obstacle to real accountability.
Both sides are looking at the exact same set of facts and drawing completely opposite conclusions.
And that really leaves us with the ultimate question, doesn't it? When the storytellers themselves become the story, and the narratives are this polarized, how are we supposed to decide what's real? It's a challenge that goes way beyond any single politician or news cycle, and it's one we all have to face.